Okay, looks like we're live. Hello, hello. I'm Perry, and we're going to get started in just about 10 minutes. If you happen to be on the line, feel free to post a question below. I'll get to it after after the main webinar. Right now, I'm just setting stuff up. If and make sure I get rid of this cough. If you are from somewhere around the world. I'll cut this out in the rebroadcast. If you're somewhere in the world, please post a note there. Let me know where you're from. I'm located in Chicago, drinking a little tea. That's right. I'm going to do this sans glasses. Maybe. Get started in, 10 minutes. We had a bunch of questions sent in, and we can start going through some of those. Jeanette asked about setting up a home cosmetics lab. We're actually going to go through all the equipment that you need to set up a lab, so we'll talk about that. Romeo asked about, how do you get the expiration date on a cosmetic? The way you do that is you run a stability test. I've actually done a webinar on stability testing specifically, but what you do is you put samples up at different conditions, and if you run through that test, that'll give you an indication of stability for a year. Sorry, I hope I get rid of this cough. Let me have some drink here. Romeo also asked if there's a way to have the exact amount of an active element to use in a cosmetic. The reality in cosmetics, active ingredients are mostly marketing things. So you can put in as much or as little as you like. Let me step away to get rid of this cough. Okay, we'll be starting shortly in about 9 minutes on my watch. No, 7 minutes on my watch. So feel free to start posting your questions. I'll get to them after the webinar. You can also post questions as we go through the webinar. We got 12 people on. Let's see if this is broadcasting yet. Well, it might not be broadcasting yet, so maybe everyone missed all that coughing. There we are. Okay, that looks like it's working. Okay, looks like a lot more people are joining. Welcome. Let me know where you're from. Feel free to post in the questions a comment about where you're from. If you have a question, feel free to post a question. If there's any technical problems, let me know about that. Hopefully you can see the webinar okay here. We'll get started in 5 minutes. In the meantime, a few questions have been sent in, so let me go through and answer one of those. Let's see. Actually, I can't read terribly well without my glasses, but so let's go with that. Um, Adina asks, what, in your opinion, is the most efficient natural emulsifier for oil and water fresh formulations? Uh, you know, you can't really answer a question like that because so much depends on, what specific oils are you trying to emulsify? How much are you trying to emulsify? What else is in your system? So when you're asking a question, you're going to have to be a little more specific for me to give any recommendations. A glycerol stearate works pretty well. A lot of people would consider that natural. Um, yeah. So, but if I get more details, and I can get a little more, give you a little more of an answer there. Another question was sent in by Haley. How do you make eyeshadow and its ingredients? We have a whole page full of free formulations. So I'll provide a link for that actually in the free book that you can get. Feel free to download that free book right now. There is a link to where you can get free formulas. Amy asks, how do you create a lipstick and the ingredients? Same deal. You can check out free formulas through the links in the free book. Now, I should say the more specific your questions are, the better. But you have to provide enough information in the question for me to be able to answer. All right, we're going to get started in just about 3 minutes. If you're on the line, feel free to post a hello or a question. I see Joe from Cincinnati. Hello, Joe. Claire is tuning in from Idaho. Idaho is one of the 3 states in the United States that I have not been to: Idaho, Alaska, and Hawaii. So, we have Karen from New Zealand. Welcome, Karen. Thanks for the question. We'll get to those at the end. Patricia's from Tampa Bay. Hello, Tampa. Hello, Tampa Bay, Florida. So I bet the weather's much nicer than here in Chicago. And we have, I'll try to pronounce the name, Lubika from Slovenia. Welcome. Thank you for coming on board. I'm Perry, and we're going to get started very shortly. Just want to make sure my slides are ready. Looks good. Looks good. We will get started in just a minute. All right. We are just 1 minute away from the allotted time. So take one last drink here. Make sure my slides are working, and we'll get started. There we go. Hopefully you could see the slides and um, everything is clear. Okay, we've got Irene says hello. Yelena says hello from New York. We got New York. We got Debbie in North Carolina. Catherine from Alberta. Mel from Brazil. Hello, Brazil. Henny from Cape Town. Oh, we got people all over the world. Yes, Rena. Yes, this is going to be recorded. Okay, so why don't we get started? Let me switch over to share my screen here, and we'll go to the slides. Okay, there we go. By my clock, it is 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock wherever you are, or the top of the hour wherever you are. So I'm going to get started. Hi, I'm Perry Romanowski, and welcome to the first cosmetic science webinar of the year here on Chemist Corner. I'm so glad you've joined me, and there's over 2,000 people who are on this webinar. This is by far the largest webinar I've ever hosted, and we have people from around the world. I really hope that you find this useful. Now, before we get started, a few housekeeping things. First, you'll see below this video is a box for asking questions. So if you have a question while I'm talking, just type in the question box, and at the end, I'll try to answer as many questions as I can. Sometimes I get a little long-winded, but I've gone on, as long as an hour after the thing has gone. Now, I might not get to every question during the webinar, but if I don't answer, be sure to include your email address, and I may have to answer that way. I should also say that this webinar technology can sometimes be a little tricky, so bear with me if there's some type of technical glitch. I'm recording this, so if there is a glitch, I can record it and then send it out later so you can watch it later. But hopefully it doesn't slow things down too much and you learn a lot from this webinar. Also, as a thank you for joining me on this webinar, you can get that free gift. There we go. The free gift called the Handbook of Practical Formulating. It's a collection of articles that can help you be a better, more effective cosmetic formulator. There's practical information about formulating, product evaluation, the equipment, and even a resource section. So a lot of stuff that I'm going to cover in this webinar will be also repeated in this book. So it'll be a nice takeaway to supplement what you learn in the webinar. Now, to get that gift, just click on the link below the video on the left side of this page, and be sure to do it sometime during this webinar because after the webinar is over, you won't be able to get it. All right, and there's another free resource that I want to tell you about. This is our 30 Days to Become a Better Cosmetic Chemist audio series. There are 30 episodes of about 10 to 20 minutes long, and you can listen to them on any podcast playing device or even just through your computer. In this series, I cover information about a career in formulating, the cosmetic industry, cosmetic science, and a lot more. It gives examples and exercises that you can do to incorporate the information you learn into your day-to-day job. There's also a companion ebook available for purchase, but to get that free audio course, just go to the link listed right below there, listed on this slide there. If you have any questions, just send me an email. I can send you that link, but there's the link right there. All right, in this webinar, I'm going to be covering a basic introduction to cosmetic formulating. After completing this webinar, you should have a good idea of the steps required in formulating a beauty product from start to finish. Now, but before I get to the main talk, I think it would be useful to tell you a little bit about me and how I got started in formulating. Growing up, I always had an interest in science, which led me to getting a chemistry degree from DePaul University. I got a bachelor's degree in chemistry and then studied for biochemistry, did a couple of years for a master's degree in biochemistry. Now, like a lot of people with science degrees, I literally had no idea what I wanted to do or even what I could do when I finished. Now, college might do a good job of teaching you science, but they certainly don't do much to teach you anything about getting a job after college. Anyway, after doing a little research about the job market, I got some interviews with a few companies and landed a formulation job at Alberto Culver. And I was only going to stay there a couple of years, a year or so, but it turned out I actually like formulating and cosmetic science. And I worked at that company for over 17 years, creating hair care and skincare products. Now, here are just some of the brands that I had worked on. Some of the formulas that I created are still being sold under these brands, the Tresemme, VO5. I did a little work on Nexus and St. Ives. Now, one of the great things about working at that company, we were a medium-sized company, that we were small enough that I wasn't pigeonholed into some specific task, like being on a stability team or something. I got to work on products from start to finish. And not only did I get a good background in formulating, but I learned a lot about the whole cosmetic product development process. Formulators were expected to do everything from coming up with formulas to testing them to scaling them up. It was a lot of work, but some great experience. Now, after being in the cosmetic industry for a few years, I started writing articles in my spare time for trade journals like Cosmetics and Toiletries and Happy. This work was eventually turned into a book called Beginning Cosmetic Chemistry, and it's still an industry standard today. Unfortunately, it's difficult to get because the publisher stopped publishing that. Now, I then turned this information into a continuing education course that is still offered through the Society of Cosmetic Chemists. Incidentally, I'm currently the president of the United States Society of Cosmetic Chemists. This is an excellent organization to which I think all serious formulators should belong. Now, about 10 years ago, I learned how to create websites, and I launched a couple of websites about cosmetics. This is a consumer blog called The Beauty Brains, and we have answers, beauty questions that consumers have, and we do a podcast, and it's pretty cool. Now, the Beauty Brains got actually turned into a couple of books, and that actually led to a few appearances on popular TV shows like the Dr. Oz Show and the Rachel Ray Show. You get quoted in the New York Times and in beauty magazines. It was actually pretty cool, and sometimes you can have a lot of fun being a cosmetic chemist. Now, I started another website called Chemist Corner, and through that, I launched a few online programs teaching people how to create cosmetic products, just like professional cosmetic formulators. Now, here's the latest Chemist Corner website, and we provide articles and resources, and there's a discussion group. And since you're on this webinar, you probably already know about Cosmetics Chemist Corner. But if you're not on the Chemist Corner forum, I'd encourage you to go join there. We have over 6,000 members and over 3,800 discussions about formulating cosmetic products. So if you have a question that I'm not able to answer here, feel free to go to Chemist Corner on the forum, sign up. It's free to join, and you probably get your questions answered by a formulator anywhere in this world. So. Now, while I don't actively formulate as much as I used to, I want to let anyone know who's considering becoming a cosmetic chemist that it's a great job. It's low stress. You get to invent products that people use, requires creativity. You're constantly learning, and you really can have fun on the job. One of my favorite things about being a cosmetic chemist is that my work had actual impact on people's lives. There are a lot of scientists working in jobs where they spend all of their time in the lab, researching just a tiny part of a problem, but they rarely get to see the fruits of their labors. As a cosmetic chemist and formulator, the things that you work on actually get turned into products that people use every day. And that is an excellent feeling. Now, there's one more thing I wanted to do before I get to the main agenda. Back in 1998 or so, I came up with a 3-word mission statement to guide all of my presentations. So whenever I do a presentation, I try to hit each of these points. These include educate, inspire, and entertain. Now, just to ensure that I get at least one of these accomplished, let me switch back to the live feed. Um, Here we go. There we go. Hello, that's me. Um, yeah, let me switch back, and I will now show you this. These juggling balls, and I usually do this until I get wildly applauded. There we go. Thank you. So at least you get some entertainment. All right, let's get back to the presentation. First, let me see. Is everything working all right? Let me know if there's any technical challenges and you're not seeing anything. But it looks like everything's going good. Going good. All right. I'm going to switch back to the slides. Okay. All right. Let's get back to the cosmetic science. In this webinar, I'm going to take you through the many aspects of creating cosmetic products. I'll do that using a product as an illustration. And along the way, we'll cover information about the cosmetic industry, formulations, raw materials, testing, and more. And if you stay to the end, I'm going to have a special offer for the Practical Cosmetic Formulating course exclusively for people on this webinar. There'll also be a question and answer session. So again, feel free to post your question as I present. I've got about 40 minutes to do this. We'll see how long this takes me. It might be longer. Incidentally, when I refer to cosmetic products, I'm talking about all personal care products. Cosmetics are more than just color cosmetics and lipstick. Things like shampoo, skin lotions, and body wash are all considered cosmetics by regulatory agencies around the world. Now, if you put something on your body to look better, then the product is probably a cosmetics. Now, to introduce you to the ideas of formulating, just a moment here. Let me switch back. I'm going to I think it's helpful to show you an example. Now, I've got this brand here. Let's see if we hide that. This is a shampoo brand called Feek. And I'm going to use this as an illustration. This is a brand that I launched as a demonstration last year, PHIQUE. It's an interesting brand, but there's many aspects of creating a cosmetic product like this that are important. So, of course, the first thing is the packaging. Now, the packaging has nothing to do with the formula, but every cosmetic product has to have packaging. And so, as a formulator, you have to know a little bit about the packaging or have a way to get packaging. There's also on the package are all the words and the claims that are made about your product. Specifically, this one is a shampoo. This says it's a moisturizing shampoo. And you have to be able to validate all of those claims. You can't just say whatever you want on your bottle. You have to be able to prove that what you're saying about your product is true. There's also another piece here called the list of ingredients, or the LOI. Every product that you make has to have a LOI if it's going to go to consumers. And this LOI essentially says all of the ingredients that are in your formula. There's a specific book, the INCI dictionary, that tells you what ingredients the names are that you have to put on your labels. But that's highly important for a formulator to know. And of course, the marketing is important to know about this. And then there's the distribution, like how do consumers get this product in their showers, in their homes. Usually it was traditionally through stores, but nowadays online stuff is much more prevalent. And now, as a formulator, you also have to know about regulations. Is your product legal? What can you legally say about it? What ingredients can you legally use? So there's really a lot for a formulator to know that goes way beyond just the formulating part. But the formulating part, of course, is what we're going to be talking about today. And now let's get back to the slides here. So those factors are important, but as a formulator to make the products, there are a few more important things to know. You have to know the raw materials. What do they do? How do you work with them? And where do you get them? You have to know for the formula, what specific raw materials do you use and how much? You need to know about the formula aesthetics, like what does the product look like? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? These are all things the formulator controls. Product performance is another one. What does the formula do? And does it work? And does it work better than other people's products? And if you're going to put these products on people, you have to know if the formula is safe. So you're going to have to do product safety testing. And finally, you also need to know how long will a formula last and be safe and effective. And to do this, you do a process called stability testing. Now, we get into all of these topics in a lot more detail than I can on this webinar that in our practical cosmetic formulating class. But for this webinar, I'm going to specifically focus on creating the formula. So here are the 6 steps that you need to follow to make a product. They include, number 1, getting set up. Number 2, picking a benchmark. Number 3, finding a starting formula. Number 4, getting your raw materials. Step 5 is making your prototypes. And finally, step 6 will be testing and refining those prototypes. Of course, if you want to sell the products, there is a lot more that you have to consider, like those packaging and claims and legal requirements. But today, we're just going to focus on making the products. All right, let's begin with the startup, getting set up. To formulate, you really need to have the right equipment. When you're hired on as a cosmetic chemist out of college, you typically will start in a lab that's already equipped with all the things you need to make cosmetic products. And this is one of the big advantages of working. I had my own mixers. I had my own lab space. It was great. But if you're hired on with a startup or a small company or a consultant service, you might not be as well equipped. And this is also true if you want to start your own cosmetic line or make products in a lab that you set up at home. So you're going to probably have to purchase a lot of this equipment to get your lab set up to work as a cosmetic formulator. Here is the basic equipment that you need. You'll need containers, weighing equipment, mixers, a heating and cooling device, lab supplies, and some testing equipment. I'm going to go through each of these in a little bit more detail. Containers. Containers are used to lab needs. These include raw material containers, so things to hold your raw materials, prototype making containers, and then product storage containers. The exact containers that you use are going to depend on the nature of the materials that you're storing, but mostly you'll need glass jars of various sizes, plastic bottles, and plastic buckets and pails. Now, for making your prototypes, you'll also need things like glass beakers, stainless steel containers. The steel containers are good for making large-sized batches. The biggest batch that you might make in a beaker is maybe 2 kilograms or 2 liters. Bigger than that, it's safer to use a stainless steel container. Incidentally, in science, we always work with the metric system. So I'm going to say grams, kilograms, liters, a lot, because that's just how scientists talk. As a formulator, you should switch your mindset to metrics. For storing your products, you can also use glass jars, but you may want to use plastic bottles. But ultimately, and that you're ultimately going to put the products in. You can find sources for containers pretty easily on the web. I use ebottles.com, but there are lots of other sources. Okay, in addition to containers, you're going to need some weighing equipment to measure the ingredients that go in your formula. In a kitchen, you use things like cups and tablespoons, and the measurements are all done by volume. Well, this isn't how it's done in the cosmetic area. That's because you need something that is much more accurate than that. When you make a formula, accuracy is the key to being able to repeatedly make a consistent formula. So the weighing equipment, that means it's crucial that you have a scale that's going to accurately measure your ingredients. There are a wide variety of scales available, and the cost range can be from rather cheap to obscenely expensive. The exact scale that you want it just depends on the size of the batches you make. But the ideal cosmetic lab is going to have 3 types of scales. A small measurement scale, and this is going to measure from anywhere from 0.001 grams to 100 grams. And this is good for measuring powders and dyes that are put in your formulas at a really small amount. Then you want a mid-range scale, and this one is going to be the one that you use most often. So it's the most important one to get. It can measure ingredients from 2,000 grams down to 0.01 gram accuracy. And for most anything that you're going to make on the prototype scale in the lab, this is probably the one you want to get, especially if your batches are less than 1,000 grams. When getting a scale for this purpose, you want to make sure that it's accurate enough, but it also should be durable enough to maintain its accuracy while being used repeatedly. And then finally, if you're going to make large samples that you're going to send out, if you're creating products in your own lab, you're going to want a large scale measurement and something that can measure, over 2,000 grams, maybe get up to 5,000 grams, because you're going to be making batches in the 10,000 kilograms or the 10 kilogram size, or you're going to be making batches in a 5-gallon bucket. So it's good to have this large one. But if you can only buy one scale, you should get the mid-range scale. Now we have mixers. Your mixer is one of the most important pieces of equipment when setting up your lab. If you have done any searching on the internet, you've probably gotten the advice that you can use a hand mixer or an emulsion or immersion blender. And while this may be true, this isn't really the proper way to make cosmetic products. Immersion blenders are fine enough for the kitchen, but to make working, stable formulas, and if you're going to be serious about being a formulator, it's just not the right thing to use. It brings in, you can only make small batches, and it brings in way too much air on a small level. So the immersion blender, it's good for the hobbyists, but it's not good for a serious cosmetic formulator. Proper mixers are center stir devices with interchangeable mixing blades. But some of the things that you consider is the viscosity of the products that you're making. Are you going to be making gels? Are you going to be making mostly emulsions? If you're going to be making really thick products like gels, you're going to need a mixer that has enough torque to move through that solution. And so stick blenders and magnetic stirrers, they just don't work for most cosmetic formulations. Now, formula sample size, one of the things that I see people doing wrong is they make batches that are way too small. Even if you're going to make a product for yourself, a 100-gram batch is just too small for most purposes, especially if you don't have a really small scale. And this is just because it's too difficult to weigh to the right accuracy. But more importantly, it's also difficult to get the proper mixing without incorporating too much air. Air in batches is just not good. Laboratory overhead mixers are designed to process up to a certain amount, usually specified in liters. Now, since viscosity issues enter the equation in direct proportion to the volume, you should consider making a bigger mixer and also consider that in the type of paddle that you use. The mixer has all of this. If you're gonna get a mixer, you get a center stir mixer, overhead mixer, like the one in this example right there. That's a Silojex mixer, that the one pictured in the screen right there. You can also get homogenizers. While the overhead center stir mixers will work for most formulas, if you're making large scale emulsions, certainly you're going to want a homogenizer to get the particle size small enough. The key is that you don't want to incorporate too much air into your emulsion, otherwise it won't be stable and it won't work properly. The mixer motor is one of the important aspects of your mixing setup, but the other piece are the mixer blades, known as the impellers. Now, when I formulate it, I mostly use the paddle blade mixer, but other mixers are like the X mixer, the spatula blades. They can all work for different types. And of course, you're also going to need things like stands and clamps and platforms, and that's just regular stuff you need for formulating. All right, the mixers are done. Now we also need a way to heat up our batches, and these are typically you get hot plates, and a hot plate is used for melting the water and soluble ingredients, creating your emulsions, reducing trapped air. So a lot of cool stuff you can do. Hot plates have a number of features that are variable, such as the top temperature, the heating surfaces. But for setting up a cosmetic lab, a ceramic coated plate is good for chemical resistance. The temperature should go up to at least 200 C. In most cosmetic formulas, you don't have to go higher than 100 C, but so 200 C is perfect. You should have a stirring capacity of at least 3 liters so you can put some weight on this thing. Temperature control, and it's nice that they're lightweight so you can move them around and make them portable. Also, you should have a water bath for cooling, but you don't really need to. You could just get a pot where you fill it with water, and you can use that as your cooling water bath. Now, once you have your containers and your mixer stuff, there are a lot of supplies you need. There's the raw materials. There's your paper towels, aluminum foil, plastic wrap, just all of the kinds of stuff that you're going to stumble into. And when you're setting up your labs, this is what you should set up. Now, as far as what raw materials you want to have, obviously you can't have a lab without all the raw materials, but the exact raw materials you get, it depends on what kind of formulas you're going to make. But here are some basic ones. You want water. There are different types of waters, but you want to have at least deionized water or distilled water. You should have access to tap water when you're formulating, but you should not formulate with the stuff that comes out of the tap. It's just contaminated with too many metal ions and other things that can mess up your formula. You should have some colors, so to color your thing, and these are FD&C dyes. They make a lot of sense. If you're going to be making body washes or cleansing products, having surfactants are good to have around. SLS, SLES are always good. But if you're going to formulate more naturally, then you want to get something like alkyl polyglucosides. You want humectants like glycerin or propylene glycol. Those are good to have. Oils like mineral oil, coconut oil, soybean oil. Again, these are good for just creating emulsions. You'll need adjustment ingredients like bases and acids and chelating agents like sodium EDTA. You need some preservatives, some preservative system, and each system is different, so you need a different preservative for all your formulas. So there's a wide variety of preservatives to get. Fragrances, it's good to have different options on hand, some thickeners. As I said, the exact type and amount of raw materials you have on hand are going to depend on the prototypes that you make most often, but most cosmetics lab will need a stock of each of these type of ingredients. Now, finally, we have the testing equipment. The exact equipment you need depends on the products you make, but ideally, most people want a pH meter. Now, for any formula you make that contains water, you use the pH measurement as an indication of the product quality. It's important to get a meter because things like pH strips are just not accurate enough to be useful for the formulator. A viscometer is another piece of useful equipment for formulators. This device measures the thickness or the rheology of a formulation. It can give you an indication of whether the product will meet consumer expectations for thickness and whether the product will remain stable over time. Another useful bit of testing equipment are microbial test kits. These will help determine whether your products are free from microbial contamination and safe for sale. Now, ultimately, you want to send out your samples to be independently tested for microbial contamination. But during the prototype phase, it's nice to be able to screen your own products. Other useful things are hair tresses for testing hair products, a blender for testing foam. Corneometer can be used for testing skin measurements, or skin moisturization, color swatches for matching colors. And for stability testing, you could get a light box and an oven. So there's a lot you can do to set yourself up. But having a pH meter, a viscometer is probably the most simple there. All right, step 2. So that was the first step, getting set up. Let's talk about the next step of formulating. I call this benchmarking or picking a benchmark. Now, whenever you start a new project, it is great to have an idea to find an existing formula that will serve as a benchmark for your formulations. Now, typically, your marketing person will propose a benchmark for you. They'll say, hey, I saw this product on the market. It's selling well. Let's copy that. Or make our own version of that. But however you work, you should have some sort of benchmark which gives you a sense of what you desire in your formula, a sense of the aesthetics, how it performs, these types of things. Now, before picking a benchmark, it's helpful to know what I mean by that. So a benchmark is an existing formula that has many of the same characteristics that you want in your future formula. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly what you're trying to create, but it should give you a target for your formula to meet or exceed. This is the product that you want to emulate. Incidentally, if you're working with a cosmetic formulator, maybe you had an idea for a product and you want to get a chemist to make it for you. If you're working with someone like that, um, you having a benchmark is the best way to get the fastest results. Some of the factors that you consider when picking a benchmark, there's a number of things, but we'll just go through a few. First, the performance. The best benchmark is the one that performs the best on the market, and you should look to the marketplace to find this. Now, if you think your idea is completely unique, that's fine, but you still have to have a product that a consumer can expect to use. I remember when I was doing dry shampoo, we did all this work on this dry shampoo. The product worked great, and we showed it to our marketing people, and they said, yeah, this is for the Tresemme brand, which is Tresemme uses big black bottles. And they said, that looks great, but how do you get it in the big black bottle? So they couldn't imagine that the consumer would change their behavior that much. So consumers expect the performance of products that are already on the market. So if you're creating a new product, you have to at least meet those expectations, and picking a benchmark is certainly the best way to do that. Now, when I was working on hair care products, the Pantene formula consistently scored the highest on both our lab and consumer tests. It's important to note that these were done blinded tests, so the packaging and packaging and the name, they couldn't really impact the results. So when you're trying to identify the best performing product in your category, you should always do blinded testing. Another factor is aesthetics, and for some products, the performance is not equivalent to the aesthetics. For example, a body wash could perform great on a foam test, but perform terrible in a consumer evaluation. Maybe they didn't like the foam, or they didn't like the fragrance or something. Maybe they don't like the story. Therefore, you should also find a benchmark that is aesthetically the strongest product on the market. And typically, that might be the thing that is the most popular. While the best-selling product is not necessarily the best performing product, you still want to make sure that your new formula, your new prototype, performs as well as the most popular product. No matter what, you should always be sure that you compare favorable to the market leader. You can use market data to find out which product is the market leader in whatever category you're formulating in. And if you don't have access to that, go to your local store and just see which products they're out of stock most of, because that's a good indication of products that are popular. When you're using a benchmark, once you picked your benchmark, you need to come up with a battery of tests to quantify how well it's going to perform. Now, this will be highly dependent on the type of product it is, but it should include a mix of lab tests and panel tests. You should also use the product yourself, just so you get a sense of how it performs. It's great to become an expert in the evaluator of your own products. Now, be sure to conduct blind tests so that you can easily pick the samples. And also repeat tests multiple times to see if you get consistent results. When I was developing the Feek shampoo formula, I ran tests like foam testing. That was done with and without oil. I did tress combing tests. I did a tress wash test, and I did panel tests. This is where I had a bunch of people try the product and get feedback. Then I used the scores from these tests to set the benchmark levels for my prototypes to meet or exceed. And so I ran the Pantene formula, say, through this test, or the Fructis formula, and then I had some targets when my prototypes had to at least match those. Benchmarks are a great way to help guide you in your formulations and to show you the data to your bosses that the formula you created is good against the competition. And you should benchmark every product you use. All right, next is step 3 is finding a starting formula. Now, creating new cosmetics is what cosmetic formulators are hired to do. But if you're new to the cosmetic industry, or you've concentrated on one specific area, you probably haven't had the chance to formulate many different types of cosmetics. So what do you do when you're asked to create a formula that you never created before? You have to find a good starting formula. Now, while you could just start from scratch, combining cosmetic raw materials in different proportions to see what you get, this isn't the best way. The best way is to find a starting formula that somebody else has already created. Then you can modify that to meet your specific needs. Unfortunately, if you don't know where to look, finding starting formulas isn't easy. But here are a few sources you can check. There are chemical suppliers. One of the most helpful things the raw material suppliers do is create starting formulas. Of course, these formulas are usually packed with high amounts of the supplier's ingredients, but they're an excellent place to start. A couple of suppliers who have good starting formulas, I found Acrota has a great formulary. Steppen is pretty good. And for home crafters, you can go to makingcosmetics.com. They have lots of formulas that you can make there. I should say these are only starting formulas. That's not the ending formula. Patents are another source. The big companies love to patent as many formulas as they can. This prevents other people from duplicating their formulas. Fortunately, it also requires them to publish some version of the formulas they're patenting. So this makes them an excellent source for finding starting formulas. You can search U.S. Patents by going to the uspto.gov websites, or go to Google Patent Search. Of course, you have to change the formula if you ever want to launch it, but it's a great place to start. Now, there are a number of cosmetic science books that include formulas. Even better is that these books give explanations of like why ingredients are added in things. You can get most of them at a large library or even buy some of them online. Here's some of my favorites. Harry's Cosmeticology. It's a great tome for formulations. The Handbook of Cosmetic Science and Technology, the 3rd edition. The Chemistry and Manufacture of Cosmetics, another great place there. And if you can't afford to buy these books, go to Google Books and look some of them up. You can type in a search term and you can find some formulas just right there, and that's for free. Trade journals are another place. Trade journals and online sources. Most of the trade journals have a good website, so you just go there. You don't have to go to the journal. But some excellent resources are happy.com. They have a good formulary. Cosmetics and Toiletries has the Cosmetic Bench Reference, which has some formulas. And ulprospector.com, another great source for formulas. They have a ton there. Just check them out. And finally, another place you can get formulas is starting with an ingredient list. So there are a lot of places you can find ingredient lists, and it'll look something like that. Now, I can look at an ingredient list like this, and I can just guess at what level things are. There's a rule we call the 1% line, which is the line at which the ingredients can be listed in any order. So if you just find the ingredients above the 1% line, you can sort of get a sense of the relative concentration of these. In the Practical Cosmetic Formulating course, we go through exactly how to make starting formulas from these lists of ingredients. I won't do that here, but let me just say it can be done. All right, on to the next formulating step. So just in sum, here's where you get starting formulas: chemical suppliers, patents, books, trade journals, and ingredient lists. Here is actually a formula to give you a sense of what a formula looks like. And that gives a link there to the spreadsheet. So you can just download that and use that. You could fill in the ingredients and the percentages, and it calculates things out for you. But this is what professional formulation looks like. These are actually what I used at my corporation when I was there, and this gets translated into the system. So you see here, it's all done in percentages and grams and specifications there and procedures. All right, step 4. When I was working for a company, it was pretty easy to get raw materials. I would just look up a raw material, contact a salesperson and that I knew from the company, and then ask for a sample. And then within a day or two, I would have this sample waiting for me. And if it was a material that my company already used, we had a few thousand in inventory, I could just go to, contact the ingredient people in my company and get a sample. It was actually much more complicated than this, but I knew how to get the samples. However, not everyone is going to work for a corporation. And now that I'm independent, it's much more challenging to get raw materials. In fact, it's much more challenging to even find out about them. But if you're going to be a cosmetic formula, you'll need to have sources for all the raw materials that you might want to use. And you need to know about them. So here is what you need to know about learning and obtaining cosmetic raw materials. Now, before you can get that, you have to learn about that. And in our practical cosmetic formulating course, we give in-depth information about all of the raw materials and how and when and why you would use a specific cosmetic ingredient. So if you're interested in that information, certainly in our course, we go through that more specifically. But here's a way that you can learn about raw materials outside of a course and just along the way. Now, there are over 17,000 raw materials listed in the INCI dictionary, and you can pretty much use any of them in your cosmetics. This number is actually a lot higher because for every material listed in the dictionary, there are multiple suppliers who make different types of materials with different trade names, and they're slightly different. So you want to narrow down this selection. You can do this by first learning about the different types of cosmetic raw materials. These are the functional ingredients, the aesthetic ingredients, and the claims ingredients. As I said, we cover this much more in depth in the formulation course. Now, once you've identified your ingredients, you can find sources for these ingredients, and there's a thing called a buyer's guide. A buyer's guide is just a listing of all the companies that sell raw materials, and plus the types of materials they sell. The most useful buyer's guides are the happy.com buyer's guide, the PCPC buyer's guide, and UL Prospector also has a good buyer's guide. You can also learn a lot about raw materials at trade shows. If you're in the New York area, the New York SCC holds a thing called Suppliers Day. It's always at the beginning of May, and every raw material supplier in the cosmetic industry goes to this show. In Chicago, actually, we're having one in April. It's called Teamworks. You can go to midwestscc.org and learn more about that trade show. But if you're in the Chicago area, there's one. There's a show in California. Internationally, there's the In Cosmetics show, which they have In Cosmetics Asia, they have In Cosmetics in Europe, In Cosmetics South America. All the raw material companies go there, and you can learn about all of the different ingredients, and you can even get samples at these places. Speaking of getting samples, once you figure out what raw materials you want to start using, you need to get the samples. And if you work for a big company, like I said, you just contact your supplier or your distributor, and they get it for you. But if you don't work for a big company, it could be a little bit harder to get samples. Your best bet is to develop a relationship with the salesperson from the company. Now, you can meet them at like an SEC meeting, or you can meet them via LinkedIn or talk to them on the Chemist Corner website in our forum. Just meet them and talk to them about what you want to do, and you could often get a sample from people. But they may or may not send you something, but if getting samples doesn't work like that, then you're going to have to buy the product. You can often buy directly from the supplier, the distributor, and you can also find sources online. There's Amazon, there's eBay. In the United States, there's Making Cosmetics. That's a good source for some raw materials. We actually have a whole list, I believe, in the resources in the free giveaway. There's a whole list of just sources of getting raw materials online. But to formulate, you're going to need to get raw materials. Now, the next step to making your formulas is actually making the formulas. So how are we making prototypes? So we've got a starting formula. We picked our benchmark. We got our raw materials. Now we're making our prototypes. And here's where you get into the lab and you start mixing raw materials together. You follow the manufacturing procedures so you know what order to add the ingredients, and because that does actually matter. And then the temperature at which you add them matters too. You'll also want to have a mixer going the whole time to blend these ingredients. Just some suggestions here. You start with the largest, this is a basic procedure. Start with the largest volume first. If you got powders in there, add the powders to your formulas so that gives them time to mix in. Most formulas will benefit from heating them up a little bit. It makes things a little bit easier to mix together. After you started heating, you can add your liquid ingredients. When you get to the top ingredient, especially if you're making an emulsion, you put in your highest melting ingredients and you hold it at a high temperature, maybe 75 C, 80 C. You hold that for 20 minutes. Then you cool the batch, and on the cool down below 40 C, you can add some of the temperature sensitive ingredients like your fragrances, like your preservatives, some of your active ingredients. You cool that down to room temperature, and that's a basic procedure. Of course, procedures vary widely, and it really depends on your whole formula, but this is a basic procedure that can work for a lot of products. shampoos, conditioners, body washes, some lotions, those types of things. As a formulator, one of the most common decisions that you have to make is like how big of a batch are you going to make. Now, to best determine this, you should figure out why you're making it. If you're making a new formula you've never made before, about a 400-gram batch size is reasonable. If you've already got a prototype and you want to do some testing, probably should make a 1,000-gram batch. If you're doing consumer testing, a 5 to 50-gallon batch is appropriate. And then if you're going to be scaling up, this is a little farther down the prototyping line, making 50 to 300 gallons is an appropriate thing. Now, for some of you, 50 to 300 gallons is going to be an entire production run. But the reality is for bigger companies, 50 they would throw 50 gallons out just on a test. So you have to know how to make all of those. When you're making a new prototype, you might be tempted to just do small batches, but I encourage you stick to 400 grams or more, just so you have the right mixing ratios. When you are developing your prototyping skills, you use them when developing new formulas, evaluating raw materials, finding cost savings, finding replacement materials, improving your manufacturing process, and of course, scale up. And as a cosmetic formulator, you have to develop all of these types of prototyping skills. All right, next is the testing part. This would be, I guess, the last step in the formulating one. When you finished your batch, you test the standard for quality control measures. For most personal care products, this includes a pH and viscosity. You'll also do a color check and an odor check. If these are basic characteristics are off a little bit, you can usually adjust the batch until it comes within your specifications. Specifications are test scores that your product has to get, and they're written down beforehand for you to determine whether it's a quality product. So you also want to do stability testing on any batches that you do, or any prototypes that you're going to go forward with. If it's a prototype that you're not going to go forward with, then you wouldn't do stability testing, and you wouldn't do microbial testing. But for anything that you're going to use or go forward with in development, you should also do stability testing and microbial testing. Now, if the product doesn't meet your performance requirements that match your benchmark, then you have to make some refinements. This can be a long process. I once tested a few hundred prototypes when I was trying to make an improved shampoo. In fact, in 2005, I had the most shampooed head in America. I washed my hair over 1,500 times that year. It was a lot. But when you're refining your prototypes, make sure you change just a minimum number of variables and you make your changes significant. That means if you're removing an ingredient entirely, cut the level in half or even double a level. And you want to see big differences between your first prototype and your second. And that way you'll know better how to adjust when you're making your third prototype. But when you're finished with your prototyping, you can run stability tests and microbial challenge tests. And if you're done on that, and then if you know how to properly test your cosmetics, that will ensure that you can make high quality, safe, stable, and legal products. Testing is really the key if you want to make safe and legal products, because you need to collect this dossier of tests that you've done to make sure that your product remains within the regulations. All right, so here in summary are the 6 steps. If you've had questions along the way, hopefully you've been putting those in, and I'm going to answer some of those questions. But here's 6-step summary. First, we talked about step 1, getting set up. Next, we talked about picking a benchmark that gives you a target at which you're trying to match. We talked about step 3, which is finding starting formulas, and give you some sources for finding those. Step 4, we talked about where you might get raw materials and learn about them. Step 5, we talked about what's involved in making your prototypes. And finally, step 6, some of the things involved in testing and refining your prototypes. Of course, after you've made the formula, there are a lot of other things that you need to do in order to sell your product. One of those is to make sure that you have the right packaging, get the proper label, figure out the marketing angle, and get a way to distribute the product. But you also need to have proper GMPs in any lab that you set up. The FDA has put together a helpful information sheet explaining everything that you need to know about following good manufacturing procedures for making cosmetics on a small scale. And you can get that right at that link right there. All right, I hope you've been posting your questions. And I'm going to get to them shortly. But first, let me tell you a little bit more about our upcoming, our course. And you can sign up by clicking the link below. Hopefully there is a link below this video, which you can go to. If there's not, our technology screwed up. And I'll send you a link later. Now, so you might be wondering about practical cosmetic formulator. When I started out formulating in the cosmetic industry, I had the benefit of working with seasoned formulators and also access to extensive formulation libraries. But I know most people are not in that situation, and that's why I've developed the Practical Cosmetic Formulating online course. It can be taken by anyone, but we focus on science majors, industry chemists, cosmetic entrepreneurs, people who want to be formulators, and people who want to sell to formulators. So actually, this is a great course for salespeople. Really, anyone who's interested in learning how to make cosmetics the way that professionals in industry do, this is really the course you want to take. By completing this course, you'll know how to create nearly every kind of cosmetic formulation. The Practical Cosmetic Formulating course, we have 9 modules on topics including product development, raw materials, cosmetic science, formulation, lab techniques, scale up, product testing. I just get into a lot more detail than we can get in this webinar. You can also get any of your formulation questions answered. I'm very responsive to any questions that you have. As you go through this at your own pace, you can just send me an email and I will respond there. It's like having your own cosmetic formulating consultant at the ready. And I usually answer within 24 hours. The Practical Cosmetic course, all the modules they're just the beginning. As a student, you have the ability to ask questions. There are additional videos and free books. You have access to some free webinars. I'll put this webinar up there, but we have a webinar specifically on preservation. We have one on regulations. I'm going to be doing one on claims. You'll have access to that. There's also quizzes to ensure that you've learned the stuff. And if you go through the whole modules and you complete the course, you can get a certificate of completion. It's signed. It has a date on there. People in the industry know me. And so if that's important to you, that's there. It's also important to know that you can learn in the way that's best available for you. We have audio lessons, we have video lessons, you have all the lessons are text. You can download everything. You can download the whole course. You can study it when it's good for you. Study while you travel. I tried to make this just work for whatever works for you in the best way. Now, I have a passion for teaching students. And I've taught people with all types of backgrounds, and we've had students from around the world. We've already had over 800 people complete this course, and more people sign up every day. Here's what a few of them had to say. Maylee says, I think the training course is great. It covers a wide range of topics and is very organized with streaming videos, PowerPoints, which really help a lot, formula files, and she really enjoyed it. Jill said, highly recommend this course. I would personally recommend the class to anyone who wants to learn about not only formulating, but the industry in general. And Eric says, I'm learning a lot of new things. They just don't cover this stuff in school. So I hope you see there that, people who have gone through the course, they've liked it. Now let's get to the webinar special. Now, since you've made it all the way to this webinar, I've got a special bonus for you. If you sign up today, and it's today only, or at least until the webinar is over, you're going to get a free 15-minute one-on-one phone call with me. So that's right. You can, we'll work out the exact details later. But if you sign up today, we could set up a time for you and I to talk one-on-one. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. The internet makes it where we can talk. You're also going to lock in the lowest price. Now, I'm going to be revamping the course a little bit later this year. And then I'm going to increase the price because there's going to be a bunch more content. But if you join now, you have access to the material lifetime and any new stuff that I add. You also have access to that. There's also have a money back guarantee, which, if you purchase the course and you're unhappy, just ask me for your money back. I only want to have people in the course that have gotten something out of the course. And so if you go through the course and you're like, hey, this isn't for me, or you've seen a little bit and you're like, you just contact me and I will give you your money back. It's money back guarantee. There's no limit on that either. There's also, we have a webinar special. Typically I don't have a payment plan, but if you go to the link right there, chemistcorner.com/webinar special, you can set up a 5 payment plan. So you can spread it out over time if you don't want to make the whole payment at once. All right, that's what I've got there. And I know a lot of you have been posting questions during the talk, and I'm going to go through those questions. But if I don't get to your question, I can answer it through email if I can. It's going to take me a few minutes to go through the questions. So I'm going to take a couple of moments and switch back there. So let's see where we are. And I could use a little drink here. All right. Should switch over to the screen. There we are. Wow. Really, this is the face I decided to go with, huh? Yeah, it's the one I was born with. Okay. So hopefully you've been sending in your questions. Let's get to a few of those questions now. We have a total of 83 questions. All right, let's see how we do here. Vandita asks, is a homogenizer useful for making small batches, or is a stick blender sufficient for making lotions and creams? As I said in the beginning, I'm not a big fan of the stick blender. If you're doing like a small sample in your kitchen that you want to use, use it up for yourself, maybe it's okay. But if you're making larger sizes of a product that you actually want to sell or you make a lot of, a stick blender just isn't going to work. A homogenizer is a much better thing to get. All right. Vicky asks, do I need a cosmetic consultant to work with cosmetics labs, or can I work directly with a cosmetic lab? You can work directly with a contract manufacturer lab or a private label lab. In fact, often they're going to have their own R&D people, and they would actually prefer that you work with them. That way they have more control over the formula. But so no, you don't need a cosmetic consultant, but sometimes it's good to have a cosmetic consultant because the cosmetic consultant can interface with that contract manufacturer, the manufacturer, and they'll know the right questions to ask. So it's just helpful, but it's definitely not a requirement. Yelena asks, do you offer private or group classes that are live? I have actually done live classes and group classes for companies. So if you'd like to set something like that up, certainly you can contact me via email, and we could set something up. All right, another question. Here's one from Patricia. Are you planning to cover any natural skincare product not using synthetic ingredients? I'm going to do a webinar on natural formulating. Maybe I'll do that next month. But this webinar could cover both synthetic ingredients and natural ingredients. Really, in my mindset, as a formulator mindset, I think of the product. When you formulate natural, what you're doing is you essentially look at the palette of all the possible ingredients you could use, and you just and then you focus on just the natural ones. But as a formulator, the process is still the same. The process that I went through is still the same, whether you're working on natural skin products or natural products or organic products. It doesn't matter. The process is still the same. You need a starting formula. You need to know your raw materials. You need that same setup. So all of that's the same. There's a question from Da. Using preservatives to extend the shelf life of natural products. Are these natural products still qualified for natural products, or do they need to be approved by the FDA? The FDA does not approve cosmetics. You have to follow the rules that are set up by the FDA, but if you follow all those rules, you're allowed to put the products on the market. The rule is, though, that it's illegal to sell unsafe products. So you have to be able to prove that your products are safe. The FDA gives you some guidelines, but again, the FDA does not approve products. In the EU, you have to have more proof. You have to have your products certified before you can launch them by an independent certifier. But the reality is the products that are in the EU and the products that are in the United States, they aren't really that much different. So those extra regulations, they don't really have much impact on the ultimate end product. So another question is whether it's natural or not. That depends on what your definition of natural is. There's no legal definition for natural. There are some natural certification bodies, natural standards you can follow. EcoCert, EWG has a natural one, NatTrue. So there's a wide range of them. The national product, the MPA, they have one. The NSF has one. So there are and I could get through that in a different webinar. But the bottom line is whether something is natural or not. Can you use liquid Germall Plus as a preservative for natural products? Some people would say yes, because it fits with their definition of natural. Other people would say no, because it doesn't fit with their definition of natural. So it really depends on what's your definition of natural. All right. Hello, Carly from London. Hello. Here's a question from Carol. If I am using DMDM hydantoin as my preservative ingredient with a combination of methyl isothiazolinone, is it necessary to use parabens too? Well, probably not. That would be, for most systems, that would certainly be enough of a preservative system. However, maybe. It really depends on the conditions of manufacturing there. It seems to me that would be overkill. If you have DMDM hydantoin and you have the methyl isothiazolinone, that should be enough to pretty much take care of any types of microbes you might run into. So I would say probably not necessary, but in a specific case, maybe. Here's a question from Diana. I own a small company making creams and lotions for oncology, massage, and hospice application. Looking for an alternative to phenoxyethanol. Need a full spectrum preservative that is non-sensitizing. Also wants something to be paraben and diazoledynyl urea free, does not impart odor, and does not discolor the finished product, and works in a range of 6 to 8.5 at a minimum. But that is a tough one there. You've just eliminated almost every preservative that I can think of. You might be able to use phenoxyethanol. Phenoxyethanol would probably, no, you're looking for an alternative to phenoxyethanol. Well, phenyl alcohol is another one that you could use. But at that pH range, you can't use anything like sodium benzoate or benzoic acid. Any of the organic acids, they're not going to work at that pH range. The reality is there are not a lot that's going to work at that range. You could do stuff like a hurdle technology where you adjust the formula, you minimize the amount of water in there, you put it in a one-time use packaging. So there's stuff you can do like that. But boy, you've made a really tough. You're asking a really tall order there, because there just aren't a lot. My suggestion is that parabens are probably going to be your best bet. There shouldn't be a concern about breast tissue. The parabens as used in cosmetics have been determined to be safe. They're not linked to breast cancer. Those stories are just not true. That's what I would go with. But if you're looking to avoid that stuff, it's a lot more difficult. Okay. I can send you an email on that too. Here's a question from Violetta. What type of machine or device do I use for stability testing? Any brands in particular that you use? I mean, for stability testing, there isn't like a machine. To do stability testing, you need an oven that holds at a specific temperature. We always did 37C, 45C. You also need a refrigerator, so you can have samples in a refrigerator. You need a light box so you can expose samples to different lights. I've done a whole webinar on stability testing, but there is not a single device where you could just put your sample in and say, stability test it for me. No, you got to put it in ovens. You have to put it in refrigerators and light boxes. You have to test them over time. And then you need the equipment to test the pH meter, the viscometer. Really depends on what you're testing, but those are the key ones. Okay, Candace says, let's see. I've been applying for some jobs, but there are not a lot of entry-level positions. I've not seen a lot of internships either. What would you recommend? You haven't said where you're from, but if you're in the United States, I would suggest that you get involved with your local Society of Cosmetic Chemists. Also at chemistcorner.com, we have a jobs link, which shows all the jobs around the different chapters that people are looking for through the Society of Cosmetic Chemists. So that's a good place to start. But really, the way that you get jobs in the cosmetic industry is networking with people, meet people in the industry. They'll know of job positions that are available, and then you can get them through that. There aren't a lot of internships. L'Oreal does have an internship program. Unilever has one. Some of the other places out in the New York, New Jersey area, they have some, but there really aren't a huge number. So it's difficult to get them. But networking, meeting people that are already in the cosmetic industry is a great place to get started. Patricia asks, can you see me via camera? No, I was not able to see you. So there you go. Next question comes from Nabil. Can a facial mud mask be formulated to be 100% natural? For example, without any chemical preservatives? Well, yeah, you can do that, but then it might not be safe, or it might not last very long. I don't know what the problem is against preservatives. Preservatives make your product safer. I know there's the sense of consumers not wanting preservatives, and maybe they don't. I know there's a whole issue on preservatives, and actually I have a whole webinar on preservatives. And after the natural one, I'll do the preservative webinar, and I can answer a lot more of these questions specifically. But is there a way to make a facial mud mask without any preservatives? I would say no. I would not encourage that. You should always have a preservative in there. I know it's popular for there to be these preservative-free products. They use some tricks to be able to do that. It's very difficult, and those things can get contaminated. I don't recommend it. Sala liked the book, download it, and asked if there's a more extensive one. We do offer the program, Practical Cosmetic Formulating, and you can get that there. All right, just going through questions. I am Perry Romanowski, by the way, and we've just finished up our webinar. I'm going through and answering some of the questions put here. If you have a question, feel free to post it below the webinar page here, and I'll try to answer it. I'm going to be answering questions. This is only scheduled to go until to the top of the hour, and we're past that. But I'll just keep answering questions as long as you're still on there, and record this if you have to leave. Thank you so much for coming. Feel free, if you have any questions about the Practical Cosmetic Formulating course, feel free to send me an email about that. And if you have ideas for other webinars, send me any of those that you might have, and I'll put together something like this. I'm trying to do one webinar a month. And so I'm looking for ideas for the next month. Actually, it seems like I'm going to do natural next month, preservatives the month after that. I'll do claims maybe, and then launching your own product line. So there we go. Here's Hannah S. As an undergraduate biochemistry student, do you recommend getting a master's or a PhD in biochemistry before entering the cosmetic industry? Well, the reality is, Hannah, most people that are in the cosmetic industry, they just have undergraduate degrees in in chemistry or biochemistry or chemical engineering. The cosmetic industry really likes to train people right out of school to learn it, because you don't really learn industry stuff even if you're getting a master's degree or PhD. To my advice would be to get started with your career right when you finish your undergraduate degree. And the University of Cincinnati, for example, has a great program, a remote program where you can get your master's degree in cosmetic science while you have a job. So that would be an excellent choice. And Fairleigh Dickinson has one too. There's some other courses around the world, but my advice is that get your undergrad, get in the industry, get started working, and then you can get a more advanced degree there. But the advancing in your career, if you had an advanced degree, you might start a little higher, but then advancing in your career just depends on how well you work at your job. So if you get started at the entry level, if you can advance your own knowledge, learn more stuff, but also get experience, you're going to be much more valuable than even somebody coming out of college with a PhD. Here's a question from Shauna. What's the best way to get my foot in the door in the cosmetic industry? I have some lab experience in the internship with this internship she did, and I'm passionate about chemistry and makeup, but I can't seem to find a job in the industry. Like I said, I would encourage you to get involved with the Society of Cosmetic Chemists, meet people, network with people that are already members, volunteer, do some help. Attend events, and you're going to meet people who are going to know of jobs. On Chemist Corner, we have a little jobs tab. You can click there, and that lists all of the websites for the Society of Cosmetic Chemists that are advertising jobs. So meet people and look for what's out there. That's my advice at the moment. Marion asks, is the formulation different by using natural raw materials? The process of formulating is not different using natural raw materials, especially if you're buying raw materials from cosmetic raw material suppliers. Now, if you're going out in your backyard and you're grinding up some plant and you're making some sort of tincture or hydrogel or hydrosol or something like that, that's still, the process is still going to be the same. You need a certain percentage of ingredients. You need ingredients that do things. You need to make them consistent. So the process is still going to be the same. The difference is going to be the performance. The reality is that the performance of the ingredients that we commonly use in cosmetic industry is that they've been optimized to be the best that they can. Because if something works better, if something natural works better than something synthetic, then companies will just use that because the product will work better. Right now, functionality is really the driving force in cosmetics, because the price of a cosmetic, you can charge whatever you want and people buy it. I saw somebody charging like $600 for 2 ounces of lotion. Now, I know that lotion at most could cost them maybe $2 a unit to make, but the price, but they get people to spend $600. So we're not really limited by the price of raw materials. And so whether it's natural, whether it's synthetic, what really look for is how does it function? And right now, most synthetic ingredients function better than the kind of natural things you can get. Headley asks, what role does borax play in dishwashing soap formulation when it's used? Now, dishwashing soap is not actually cosmetic, so I don't really cover that. But in that case, I believe borax probably has a preservative effect in that formula. Borax is boric acid, and if it keeps the pH low enough, that can have a preservative effect. Dee says that she loves the juggling. Well, thank you, Dee. I love to juggle. I actually juggle every day. Okay. Carol says, what about new products without packaging? Are they safe? And she's talking about the Lush line. Well, I'll tell you this. Lush is a big corporation or a sizable company, and they're going to make sure that their products have been proven to be safe. So I would feel good about going to Lush and buying their products. actually, I don't like to go to Lush because the fragrance there is just overpowering. I smell it, I'm like, oh. I can't even walk past one. But as far as the products go and safety, yeah, I would say that you can be fairly confident that they're safe. Now, Lush has put a lot of investment in R&D and their setup, and they're keeping clean manufacturing. And just because Lush can do something, sell you beauty products without packaging, although they must have some packaging, unless it's just like a anhydrous ball. But if it's a cream or a liquid, there must be some packaging. Um, but anyway, Lush has spent the money to do that. Most people, most companies would not be able to do that, and so I don't think you should be emulating what Lush is doing, because you just won't be able to do it yourself. Maybe you can find a contract manufacturer who could do it, but again, this is very risky. I don't think they're taking a risk which I wouldn't feel comfortable taking. Rebecca asks, how difficult do you feel it is to make formulas that are more on the natural side and chemical free, and be able to keep them stable and safe to sell to clients without it going bad? I'm in Canada, so things are different here in the US. In Canada, things are regulated by Health Canada, but they pretty much follow the same kind of rules in the United States. Maybe they're a little bit more strict with paperwork and required testing. They do follow the EU to some extent too, but the products that you can get in Canada are very much the same as the products you can get in the United States, at least as produced by the large multinationals. It's just there's a little more regulation. So the question is, how difficult it is to make formulas that are more natural side? And chemical free. Well, you can't make anything chemical free. I think everything, from my vantage point, everything is a chemical. Water is a chemical. So I don't exactly know what you mean chemical free. Some people don't think vinegar is a chemical. Vinegar is acetic acid. That's a chemical too. So the word chemical free to me it's a non-starter. There is nothing that's chemical free. Now, if you're asking about what's on the more natural side, then that depends on what you mean by natural. The reality is that there's no such thing as a natural cosmetic by some definition, right? And I say that is because you can't go outside and plant a seed and grow a bush and pull off a body lotion or a lipstick or a shampoo. There's no plant that creates those. All cosmetics have to be processed by some human being. So there's nothing natural. Now, you could grow a banana or you can grow an apple. Those, to me, those are natural. You can't grow any kind of cosmetic. So on some level, there is no such thing as a natural cosmetic. However, there are natural standards. So some people would say, well, I made this using coconut oil, and I got the coconut oil and I did stuff to the coconut and I got the oil and just the oil. And so that's natural. I can understand it. So now you've got to define what is natural. And of course, like I said, there are plenty of outfits out there who have come up with natural standards. And the reality is that they keep loosening those standards before the Cosmos standards or the ECOCERT standards. They used to have a rule that you couldn't use sodium lauryl sulfate. Even though sodium lauryl sulfate can be derived from coconuts, they just had a rule, no sulfates. Well, a lot of people, they couldn't make the products they wanted to make, so they switched it around, and now if it's naturally derived sodium lauryl sulfate, then it's okay as natural. Now, what's changed there? I don't know. So the thing is, yes, you can make something natural that fits to a natural standard. You just got to define what that natural standard is. Yes, you can make them safe and stable. Products from Burt's Bees, they're safe and stable. From Aveeno, they're safe and stable. Say Yes to Carrots. All those brands have done natural that way. Now, I would say that none of those products are natural because they're all chemically processed. But I don't think you can make one. So, all right. Let's see. Here's one from Hannah here. I'm very interested in your path to becoming a cosmetic scientist. I would love to have a phone conversation with you about this, gain more insight. Yeah, I'll talk to you. Sure, I'll send you an email and we can set that up. Are those overhead mixer American brands? I'm in the UK. Lisa, in our forum, we have a discussion where people get specific about mixers. And the one I showed here, the brand I mentioned in the talk here, that was an American brand. I don't know if they're international, but yeah, we certainly look at that. Here's one from Heba. I'm homeschooled and interested in science and chemistry. I'd like to know if slime is related to chemistry and what I could try next. Also, what is the minimum age for your course? We don't specifically have a minimum age, but typically, 18, be an adult to do it. But your question about slime is, yes, slime is chemistry related. Slime is actually a very cool thing to get involved with. It's very popular in the United States to make slime from Elmer's glue. Elmer's glue is a polymer called polyvinyl alcohol, PVA, or polyvinyl acetate, one of those. You can do a chemical reaction with PVA, react with boric acid or sodium borate, and you can turn that into slime. It's the cross-linking between the polymers. It's very cool. But yes, it's all about chemistry. Hannah says the equipment seems expensive if you're setting up a home business. Yes, setting up your own lab can be a bit expensive. Maxine asks, what about reverse osmosis water? Is it good to formulate with? Yeah, reverse osmosis water. Yeah, you could formulate with that. It's like deionized water. So yeah, you can formulate with that. All right, we are coming through. We're just answering questions. You've been on the Chemist Corner webinar. The webinar has already passed. You can go back and watch it later, but I'm just answering questions. If you have a question and you're at the end of the webinar, feel free to post it at the bottom. Said the video stopped broadcasting. I hope it's still broadcasting. It seems like it's broadcasting. So Google tells me it's still broadcasting, and we have 163 viewers right now. So still on. Okay, since we're still on, let's answer some more questions. Christopher asked, the mixers showed on the slide. How do you spell that brand name? Where can you purchase it? You can purchase it through Amazon. That's where I find that one. Well, I'll send you an email with the exact spelling on that one. All right, Karen says, thanks for the webinar. I'm a chemist and in the process of getting my MSc in medicinal chemistry, but I love cosmetics. Yeah, I love cosmetics too. I have a few questions. What do you think would be the best and easiest way to get into cosmetic formulating? I talked about getting a network with people in the Society of Cosmetic Chemists, strike up relationships. You can find people on LinkedIn. Go to your local SCC, meet people, and to me, that's the absolute best way to get started. What would be the first product that you would recommend that I try to formulate? I'd suggest that you try something like a shampoo or a body wash. These are great chemistry, easy to make, easy to understand. You don't need a lot of complicated equipment, just a mixer. You don't need to heat things, you don't even really need to heat up a thing like that. But I would say start with a shampoo or a body wash. Those are the easiest. Then you can get to more advanced things like lotions and creams. Those are a little more advanced with emulsifiers you need and that sort of thing. Do you have any experience with nail polish? No, not really. I mean, I've tried it before. I know the formulas, but I've never actually personally made nail polish. Nail polish is a more specialized area of formulating. So there aren't a lot of cosmetic chemists with a lot of experience in making nail polish. All right. Thanks for the question, Karen. Next up, Jeanette asks, what do you think about how to test shea butter for purity and grading before sale? It's a difficult question. I mean, what you want to do is, I guess you're talking about your supplier selling it. I don't exactly know what this question is, but my advice to you is to look at the specifications for shea butter as put out by the supplier of the shea butter, and from that and the C of A, which is a certificate of analysis, which you should get with any raw material you buy. Just check to see that it meets the specifications for purity that you have, and you should be good to go. Sherry asks, will the presentation be available afterwards? Yeah, I'm recording it. Yeah, you'll be able to see it afterwards. There's another one that says the video stopped broadcasting. Hopefully it didn't stop broadcasting, but I'm recording it, so there we go. Shauna says, I've seen a natural brand using coconut water in a hydrating mist. How can they manage this? Consider that coconut water is extremely perishable. Well, the way that you can do coconut water in a hydrating mist is that you just put a tiny amount in there. You can make it a coconut water extract, where you mix it with 1% coconut water and 99% propylene glycol, and there you go. So, and also coconut water is extremely perishable if you don't have a preservative. But if you throw a preservative in there, the coconut water, it won't grow anything. Now, what does the coconut water do? What would pure coconut water really do that you would notice? That's difficult to tell. So I totally could understand them making coconut oil there. Mary Lynn asks, what's a lab test versus a panel test? Panel test tested by consumers. So yes, a panel test is if you could have a trained panel of people that you go to. A lot of times it's just like when we were in the lab, we would just have a bunch of people whose opinions I respected about trying a product. And so I'd go to 5 or 10 people that I knew and say, hey, here's a product. Could you try that? Give me some feedback. Or I had a specific questionnaire that I would have them fill out. That's kind of a trained panel test. You could also do a consumer test. A consumer is where you just go to people who have no particular knowledge or experience beyond normal experience using cosmetics, and you give it out to 10 consumers, 30 consumers is really what you want to do, or 100 if you can get them, but that gets expensive. And those consumers will just give you feedback about the product. Now, I don't put a lot of stock in what consumers say about the specifics of a formula, like consumer says, oh, it's too thick or it doesn't foam right. What I really put stock in as far as consumer is asking a consumer, do you like this or don't you like it? And that is reliable whether they like something or not. What's not reliable is why they like something. People don't always know why they have a preference. So the best information from consumer tests is do you like it or not? From a panel test, these people are presumably trained, and they could be your lab mates or people that you respect, but presumably they've used enough products where their opinion is almost like testing wine, where you have wine experts versus just consumers. I mean, everybody tastes, right? But if somebody's an expert at using a shampoo or a conditioner or a skin lotion, then they would be able to go on your panel test. A lab test is some specific thing where you have a lab device where you can test a specific property. A great lab test would be like a tress test. You have combing and you could measure the amount of force required to go through. That would be a lab test, or a foam test where you put the foam in a blender and you mix it up and you see how high the foam goes. So lab tests are devices. You have a lot of control over them. Panel tests, you have a little less control, and consumer tests, you have almost no control, but you can get good data about whether people like things or not. All right. Next question. We still got a bunch of questions left. I'll go through what I can. Right now we're at 2:30, so here we go. Sanders says, I wanted to attend a practical cosmetic formulating course before. Do we have lifelong access? Yes, you do have lifelong access. So once you sign up, there is no limit. I think that's different than a lot of other courses that you can get on there. Yeah, if once you sign up, go through the course, you go through the course, you can go through it as many times as you want. You can ask me questions as long as you want. Once you sign up, you are lifelong access. And if it ever gets to a point where I'm not involved with it, You can download all of the information. And I'll have that available where you can download it, have it on your system, and it's all available. So, yes, lifelong access. Tanisha says, will the presentation be available in PDF form? Um, maybe, maybe I'll send. I'll have to put that together. We'll see. It's available in this video form here at the moment. Mary Lynn asks, can you include the three types of raw materials on the slide? The three types of raw materials on the slide are functional, aesthetic, and claims ingredients. Yeah, well, that's what they, that's what they are. So, all right, we're hopefully I get to as many questions as I can here. Lindsay says, how can you microbial test a powder? I have a powder made with dicalcium phosphate and xylitol with other ingredients, and I want to be sure if it's not growing anything when it's exposed to air and humidity. That is a good question. I would send that product out to a testing house, a microbial testing house like Cosmetic Test Labs. They do a good job of doing that. But it's you're asking is kind of a complicated question. But I think what would happen is you would take the powder, add some moisture to it, and then swipe it on agar plates, expose it to the microbes that are tested, and then see if anything grows. So that's kind of how that would happen. Shauna says, my focus is on natural products and finding good alternative to synthetic ingredients. I'm okay with making concessions for the right reasons. Is this something that the course will cover? The course focuses on making cosmetics in general, and we don't, and we do have areas where we talk about natural and give you natural options. If you have we also have a natural cosmetic formulating course for people who already have some formulating background. So this actually gives you the good alternatives to synthetic ingredients, the natural formulating course. One of my suggestions is if you don't know a lot about formulating, take the PCF course first, and then you can take the naturals course, and there's a significant discount to taking both courses. But in that course, we do cover that. But of course, if you join the PCF course, I will answer whatever question you have. So if you want an alternative to some specific thing, I can give you that advice there too. Paula says there's a lot going on about safety of cosmetics. Do you consider the safety of ingredients to the consumer when formulating? And if so, what resource do you use? Yes, absolutely. When you're formulating, you have to consider safety of the products for the consumers. In fact, it is illegal to sell unsafe cosmetic products. So if you cannot prove that your product is safe, it's illegal to sell. And the FDA does crack down on companies that are not able to prove that their products are safe and effective. The source that I use, now some people will use the Environmental Working Group's Skin Deep database. I don't like that one because it's not science-based, it's fear-based. And the reality is that they simplify ingredient toxicity in a way that's not appropriate. Is that because they talk about whether something is toxic or not? Everything is toxic. It already depends on how much of the thing you're exposed to. In small levels, even highly toxic things are safe for you. In high levels, even perfectly safe ingredients are highly toxic. So that's the thing that the Environmental Working Group misses, and they don't care to change that. But that's why I don't like that source. But if you want to know about product safety, ingredient safety, the Cosmetic Ingredient and Review, the CIR, that is the best place to get safety information about cosmetics. They go through the toxicological reports, final reviews on ingredients, and it's just the best source, the CIR. In CIR ingredients, you just check it out on Google for the exact link. Okay, Kristen says, I'm just beginning my education for cosmetic science and have been looking in the Fairleigh Dickinson University. Have you heard good things about this degree program? Yes, it's a very good degree program. So I would recommend the Fairleigh Dickinson University master's program in cosmetic science. So yes. Mel says you mentioned that incorporating too much air in your formula can compromise the stability of your product. Do you remember any situation like this? Thank you in advance. Well, one of the products I was working on was the VO5 hairdressing. We had an emulsified version of the VO5 hairdressing, and they were whipping too much air into it. And so when it was filling, it says on when you're when you make a product, you have to put how much is in the product. There's 8 ounces there, right? You have to say how much is in there. Well, when they fill it, if you fill it with air, that the volume will go too high, but there wouldn't be enough mass in there, so it wouldn't weigh right. And so that was a situation where the air made filling wrong. Now, also over time, what would happen is in that same product, when there's too much air in it, over time the air would bubble out. And as the air moves through the formula, you create collisions between the emulsified particles. They coalesce faster and ultimately leads to a separation. So that is a situation where that happens. I know we had specific lotions or batches of lotion, not anything that we manufactured, but in the lab, you'd often have people create a lotion that had a layer of air and pump throughout, and those things just would not stand up to a freeze-thaw stability test, for example. Kaylee asked, do you have any guidelines about optimizing cosmetic formulation, like DOE software, for example? I did learn the DOE system for formulating, but I didn't find it terribly helpful for cosmetic formulating. And one of the big reasons is there aren't a lot of great specific tests to compare the performance of your product. And so that gets very difficult. So DOE was never terribly helpful for me. What I did do is I used the knockout test. And a knockout formula is where you take a formula and you make a series of those formulas, knocking out just one ingredient. And then you see what effect that has on pH, performance, viscosity, appearance, and that sort of thing. And I found my knockout experiments much more useful than a DOE testing. But some people might disagree with me on that. But for me, knockout formulations gave me every bit as much information I needed as a DOE, and a lot less formulating was required, or prototypes. Elsie says, does the formulation course address regulatory and legal issues regarding ingredients and marketing statements? Yes, we do. We do cover that in the formula. So yes, feel free to sign up for that. Joanne says, I make plant-based cosmetics and skin and hair care. Do you have a good source to find natural ingredients to compare and substitute for synthetics? The question isn't specific enough. If you said, here's a specific ingredient, a synthetic ingredient I want a natural alternative to, I might be able to give you some answers to that. But just in general, I would say no. I don't have anything there. But I could get specific. If you had a specific question, I could attempt to answer that or find the information. That's another thing. I have a lot of information here, but I also know where I can find a lot of information. So if I don't have an answer to your question right away, I know how to find the answer. Emma says she wants to learn about hair conditioners. In the PCF course, we cover hair conditioners extensively. Kay says, what new topics are you adding to a new course? I'm going to just kind of expand in the upcoming time. I'm going to expand the course a bit more. And I've had some people request more lab demos. And so I'm going to get into a lab and I'll demonstrate making more products. In the PC, of course, I go through the science behind things, the raw materials behind things, what you add, how much, but I don't get into like a specific lab demonstration. I do with a couple of things, but for most things, I do not have a specific lab demonstration. Like, here's the mixer, here's mixing, add in the like that. I just thought it was kind of redundant at the time, and I haven't had a lot of people asking for that, but I've had a few. So I think in future iterations, I'm going to add more of that stuff. I'm also going to add more stuff about regulatory, about claims, and just other things involved in the whole cosmetic formulating development. Okay, here's a question from, let's see, Uwais. But I want to know, thank you for the introduction. I want to know what it takes to get enrolled with these online courses. Just click on the link there and you can join the course. The link to the formulation spreadsheet doesn't seem to work. Do you have an updated link? It should work, but I will send you an updated link on how to get that. Hannah, if you've joined the course, I'll contact you via email. Hannah asked, how do I sign up for the 15-minute call? If you have the course, I'll contact you by email and we'll set something up. Rachel says, is additional testing required if info is provided on an MSDS stability? Typically, you don't have to do any extra testing for the MSDS. You can get all the MSDS information from all of the raw materials that you use and the MSDS and then add that also to the specifications of your finished products. So combining all that, there really isn't a lot of extra testing you need to do to create an MSDS for your product. Alex says, not a question, but I want to thank you. I attended the SEC last year and watched this refresher. Looking forward to more options. Thank you, Alex. I'm going to actually be, Alex, in Calgary. I'm actually going to be in Toronto, which I suppose is not near Calgary, but I'm going to be in Toronto next month. Salmon says, Perry, could you do an ebook or a course on color matching foundations? I'm halfway there and yet to come up with 40 skin tones colors is not easy. Yes, that would be a great idea. I'll have to find an expert to do that because color matching is not specifically my area of expertise, although I do know somebody. So I'll look to develop something like that. Okay, I'm going to answer a few more questions. We're already a little long, but hey, if you're still on, let's see if people are 130 viewers still on. Stay on. Thank you. All right, we'll keep answering here. Cheryl says, is it okay to make cosmetics in your kitchen? No, not really. Especially if you want to sell them. You should not make cosmetics where you eat or where you make food, and it's illegal according to the FDA. So if you are going to make cosmetics at home, which you can do, what you want to do is set up a lab area away from your kitchen. Basement is good. You know, a laundry room, somewhere where you can set things up. But no, not where food is being made. You should not set up your cosmetic lab. Michael says, can you say a few words? May you say a few words about how to scale up from the laboratory scale to the huge scale in a huge scale? The way you scale up really depends on the formula that you're making. But let's take something like the Fique shampoo that I made first in a lab, and then we scaled up. So to do that, you have to first make the lab, follow the procedures in the lab. And that way you get the order of addition. You'll find out what ingredients take a long time to go into solution. And remember, on a lab scale, that's the best mixing that you're going to get. Because on a larger scale, say 3,000 gallons, and that's about the size that people make for a large run of shampoo. The blades are just really slow moving around. Now you get a lot of turbulence around those blades, but it's hard to get things mixed. So something that might take you 2 seconds in a beaker can take 2 minutes to get into solution on a larger scale. And so what you have to do first, figure out what those potential problem ingredients are. You do that in a lab. Then you go to a larger scale, say a 5-gallon scale, and you make a batch at the 5-gallon level. And then if you can go up higher, you can go up to 100 gallons, for example. And once you get to about 100 gallons, that's pretty good indication of how it's going to behave on the super large scale. But really, it's a series of ever larger batches and learning something along the way. Ultimately, you do your first production run. You, as the formulator, should be there, observe what's going on, and make sure that the product is going the way it's supposed to. Yelena says, I'd like to formulate my own makeup lines. Will this be covered in the course? We do cover color cosmetics in the course, yes. Now, if you're going to make your own makeup line, it's a little bit difficult to make your own makeup line. I want to be honest with you, because to make your own makeup line, it really requires specialized equipment. You need a press that can give like 3,000 pounds per square inch so you can press your powders. And while most people, if they want to make their own makeup line, you want to work with a contract manufacturer or a private label company to create the formulas for you. You can pick the colors that you want and things. And maybe if you want to make lipstick, you could do that at home. But if you're going to want to actually make color cosmetics, eyeshadow, blush, foundation, that sort of thing, the course will teach you how those things are made. That's not to suggest that you could probably make it at home. You're going to have to work with a contract manufacturer to get something like that made. Shauna says, I use Optifen Plus for pretty much every cream or lotion I would make. Would you consider this generally effective for most creams containing water? Yes, I would consider that effective. So you should, of course, any system you should test to make sure that it works and it's safe. But yes, I would say so. Mel says a mix of pentylene glycol, desylene glycol could eliminate the necessity of phenoxyethanol or any other preservative. Maybe, but those things actually don't have broad spectrum preservative effects. And glycols also can destabilize your formula. So it's not always a simple switch out of that. But yeah, that is one possibility. Juan asks about what are the 3 best preservatives you recommend for a beginner. Can't really answer that. It depends on your formulas. I would say parabens are great. DMD-hydantoin is great. Now, if you wanted a specific thing, like phenonip is a good choice. But it really depends on what you're making. Maria says, can you talk a little bit about the microbial test kits? Where might you find them and what do they entail? I think makingcosmetics.com has some microbial test kits that you can do. And essentially, I haven't seen the kits specifically, but essentially you take a sample of your thing, you blop it on the device or the blotter that they have, and you incubate it overnight, and you see if anything grows. So that's kind of the way they work. But yeah, makingcosmetics.com, I believe they have some of those. Or just Google a microbial test kit, and that'll give you can find some there. Juan says, can you share a list where we can buy raw materials in the U.S.? I believe in that book, I believe I have a resource listed. But ulprospector.com has a lot of suppliers there. Go to New York SCC website and see the list of all the suppliers that are at Suppliers Day. That will really get you started there. Lisa says, do you formulate for a consulting fee? I do not do any formulating for consultants. I sometimes will take on consulting projects where I will talk to you about your formulas. I will help you with the formulation, but I don't actually mix stuff together. So I can give you advice. I'm just, but there are a list of formulators in the forum who all offer services. So I'd recommend you checking out the forum there. Okay, we still have a few more questions. If you have questions along the way, feel free to ask. I'm going to be wrapping this up in about just 10 more minutes or so. Amy says, no question today, but I wanted to say thanks for all the Beauty Brains podcasts. I will miss the banter between you and that rotten Randy. Loved your song at the end. Well, thank you, Amy. I had a lot of fun doing the Beauty Brains, and perhaps I'll bring it back in the future. Maybe find another brain to work with, but at the moment it's on hiatus. But you can still go back and listen to all the old shows. But thank you. I really appreciate it. Mel has some advice here, and this could answer one of the questions. Perry said, he says, about the preservative-free mud, they could sterilize it in an autoclave in small flask and then use a unidose system. The point is that they need to have an autoclave and shot flasks, which are not cheap, but the minerals will all be there, and the product will endure for a long time as long as it's sealed. I don't want to be a smartass, but you seem so open and passionate that I thought you wouldn't be offended by these inputs. And besides, it's only for reading. Actually, Mel, no, I appreciate that. And you're right. People could autoclave something, kill off all the bacteria, seal it up, and yeah, absolutely, that's a way you could do that. Single shot. It's just really difficult for just a regular person to do that. But yeah, that's absolutely a way you could do. And yes, I absolutely appreciate any input that other formulators who have more expertise in some areas of formulating than me. Yeah, please feel free to chime in. Claudia says, I'm currently making small batches. Is there a natural preservative I can use to ensure my product is preserved? Depends on what you're making, depends on what you consider natural. So I would need more information to be able to answer that. James said, would you increase the amount of preservative of replacing water in a shampoo with an herbal decoction? Yes, absolutely. Anytime you add more natural ingredients to your products, you need more preservation. And the reason is this, because out there in nature, microbes love to grow. They grow perfectly fine. Bacteria, Pseudomonas, fungi, mold. It grows out in nature. They don't need people involved. But now plants have evolved to have chemicals that can fight specific strains of these microbes. It's a big battle out there. But what that does mean is that outside, everywhere you go outside, there's microbes. And anytime you take something from outside or a plant or something and you put it in your product, you're putting in with it millions of spores, of bacteria, of mold, which all can contaminate your product. So the more natural stuff you put in there, the more contaminated it can be. So the more preservation you need. Lily says, I have a master's degree in analytical chemistry, but now I realize cosmetics is my passion and I want to get into it. However, I can't get a job offer from cosmetic companies. Do you think it's worth getting another more specific bachelor's degree or cosmetic science MS degree to move forward in my career? If you're having a problem finding a job in the cosmetic industry, then yes, taking one of these cosmetic science specific programs like the University of Cincinnati or the Fairleigh Dickinson program, or University of Toledo has something too. Yeah, that can help you move forward in your career goal. However, you could also, try to get in the cosmetic industry with your degree in analytical chemistry. They're like companies P&G, Unilever, a lot of small company contract manufacturers. they use analytical chemists in the quality control department. So get in the QA QC department with that analytical degree. You could eventually then springboard and move into the formulating area. But yeah, going through one of these advanced degrees could help jumpstart your career potential there. All right, just a few more questions. We answered some of these. Janine says, in addition to my question, I am training to be an educator teaching color and product chemistry, and I want to know all I can about ingredients. Well, Janine, you can join our course and we get more specific, we'll give you more specific information about specific raw materials. So I would encourage you to do that. And any raw material that I don't specifically cover in the course, I'll be happy to talk to you about it, answer any question that you have about it. I signed up for the course before this webinar. Will I still qualify for the call with you? Yes, you will. So I'll send you an email, Yelena, and yeah, we can chat. So I will send you an email specifically on that, and we can set something up. Karen says, does SLS derived from coconut have the same side effects as synthetic SLS? Your session has gone off the air. It's off the air. What? Looks like I'm still broadcasting. Oh, maybe I'm not still broadcasting, but I will. I will send the answer. And the answer to this question is there is chemically no difference between synthetic SLS and coconut SLS. In fact, you could make them and not know the difference. So no. So any side effect that synthetic SLS would have would also be a side effect that you would get from coconut-derived SLS. All right, since I'm told that I'm off the air, I still see some people asking questions. I guess I'm still broadcasting, so I'm going to keep going. Thank you, Troka. Thank you for letting me know. Well, let me just keep answering. And if you have to drop off the webinar, well. Thank you for joining. I'll keep recording. I'm probably not going to get through all of these questions, but I will get through I'll stay on for 5 more minutes. That'll get us right to 3 o'clock, and that'll give you an hour of answering questions. Indria says, can certain essential oils help to preserve products? Yes, they can. It really depends, but I would not rely on essential oils as my preservative system. They're just not broad spectrum enough. MS says, may I have a link to the 30 days podcast? Yeah, I'll send you that. Joanne says, do you consider essential oils a valid source for preservative use as they are highly antimicrobial in small doses? No, essential oils are not a good source for preservations. They're a good like helper ingredient for preservation, but the problem is they're oils, so if you have a water-based system, they're sort of trapped up in there, so they're not going to have much effect there, and they're also not broad spectrum enough. They might kill specific microbes, but they're not broad spectrum enough. Generally, I would not consider an essential oil as a valid preservative. Jacqueline says, how do I join the organization you spoke of, not the forum? That's the Society of Cosmetic Chemists. Go to scconline.org and you can join the organization there. Alex says, in general, can you tell me how a cationic or anionic ingredient affects the rheology of a cream formula? That really depends on what else is in the formula. You can make, in general, no, I cannot answer that question. You can make a product, a cationic based emulsifier or an anionic based emulsifier. You can make them a cream that has exactly the same rheology. So it really depends on what's in the rest of the cream. So if you can get more specific about that question, there is not a general answer that I can give. Okay, Ahmad says, is there a guide or usage descriptive manual that explains raw material and usage? Our course goes through raw material and usage. Any specific guide, Harry's Cosmeticology, the book that I mentioned, that does. And the other books that I mentioned, actually, all of those will get into raw materials and specifically. So, Jacqueline says, okay, can anyone join the Society of Cosmetic Chemists? You actually have to qualify. You need a science background, but if you have a science background, you can join the Society of Cosmetic Chemists. If you don't have a science background, you can actually join as an affiliate member, and you get almost all the benefits of being a member. You can't run for office and that sort of thing. But as far as joining it, yes, you can. Jasmine says, I'm currently taking the PCF course. It's great, by the way. Thank you, Jasmine. I want to know if the PCF course will cover the natural formulating talks or if I have to take that course after this. Yeah, if you want more specific about natural, then our natural PCF course is a good one to take. As a student, you get a significant discount to take the other course. But if you had any specific questions about natural, even if you're taking just the PCF, I'd be happy to answer those questions. Janine says, I'm a hair colorist looking to become more knowledgeable with the chemistry aspect of hair products. Will your class help? Yes, absolutely. Our class would help somebody in your situation. Karen says, thanks for the webinar. I found it to be informative and clear and your manner enthusiastic. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Elizabeth says, great information. I only wish I hadn't missed so much because of the work. Well, Elizabeth, we're recording it, so I'll send you a link where you can watch it at a later date. All right. Looks like which scale is the best to buy for measuring cosmetic materials? So asked Cheryl. Actually, I review scales in a blog post that I wrote on that. I'll send you a link to that. But look up lab setup, and I have some links there. Indria says, how do you avoid shea butter from turning grainy when heating? Well, that depends on the quality of your shea butter. One of the methods some people have suggested is that you cool it down more rapidly, and that could prevent the graininess. But really, ultimately, it depends on the quality of the shea butter that you get, because it depends on the chemical makeup of that. What happens when it goes grainy is that some things have a different solidifying point or melting point, and as they cool, things with the higher melting point will come out of solution first, and so that depends on the quality of the product, the raw material. Jalissa says, will you tape the seminar available for you? Yes, recording of this will be available. Colleen says, on the same line of the botanical coated mica question, if I do figure this out, will the botanicals even do anything for the skin? I'm wondering if extract need more of a liquid as a carrier. Well, that depends on whether botanicals do anything for the skin at all. Even if you directly put it on there, there's limited proof that a lot of these things work, and ways to measure it. Now, the reality is a lot of botanicals you use are like 1% of the botanical and 99% propylene glycol or some other solvent. And so it's highly unlikely that they're doing that anyway. And so, yeah, it's a very complicated question, but it's most likely that your botanicals are not having a noticeable impact. Kim asks, is collagen absorbed by the skin or only taken internally? Well, if you put collagen on your skin, no, it does not get absorbed down to the dermal layer where it could have some sort of building effect. Internally, to some, there has been some studies which suggest internal Eating of collagen can have some effect on your skin. I remain highly skeptical of that because it has to go through your digestive system. That breaks it down. But, there are a couple of studies, but there's no study that suggests that collagen put on top of your skin is going to get absorbed down to the dermal layer where it could have a building effect. Heba says, is it possible to make slime with PVA powder and water? No, actually. Well, yes, you could use PVA powder and water, but you need another ingredient, and that would be the borax or the boric acid or some sort of acid that's going to cross-link the PVA powder. Yes, you can make it that way. Lily says, would you say the course you offer contains tons of similar information about the cosmetic science they teach in college, graduate school? Thanks. Yeah, I cover a lot of the practical stuff that a formulator would need to know. But my course is, 15 hours of content, I think. And at graduate school, it's a lot more. So it gets just a lot more in depth if you're going to graduate school. It's certified by a university, so you have that. So you could learn a lot more. Now it's going to be a lot more expensive, but my course is a great introduction to formulating. And then if you took my course and then went on and got your cosmetic science degree, you'd have just a much better basis for going through the course. It would be a lot easier to go through. Diandria says, I'm wanting to have my own cosmetic line. Quick question, when does the practical course start? The course is ongoing, so whenever you sign up, that's when the course starts. They're pre-recorded videos, and you can join whenever you like. You can go through them whenever you like. I'm always available to answer questions if you have questions along the way. Alex asked, the formulation courses do we offer? Practical Cosmetic Formulating is the course that we offer. I also do live classes through the Society of Cosmetic Chemists, beginning cosmetic formulating, practical product formulation, natural cosmetic formulating. So those are some that I do. Let's see. Jose says, what's the price of the formulation course? Just click on that link and it has all the pricing information there. At the moment, $547 is the moment. The courses, yes, all the courses are online. All right, so we just have a few more questions, but we passed the 3 o'clock hour, so I'll have to answer those questions through email. Thank you so much to everybody who stayed on the line and who joined the course and who asked questions and who participate in the Chemist Corner audience or community. I really appreciate it. I especially appreciate people who are in people who are in the forum and participate in the forum and send me emails. And it's great. If you have ideas for other webinars, just send me an email or just put it in the questions section here. I'm going to look through all of these questions. And maybe in the future, I'll do another webinar on that topic. But thanks again. And until next time, good luck and happy formulating.